Introduction to Google Calendars. My name is Tech Support, your Seeing Eye e-learning evangelist. Today we're going to be covering off an introduction to Google Calendars. So let's get started. In this lesson we are going to learn what a Google Calendar is. We are going to learn when, from the viewpoint of the Seeing Eye system, we need to use the Google Calendar, and in what situations it is better to avoid using the Google Calendar system directly. I'm going to show you how to log in and access your Google Calendar, and after that we're going to explore the Google Calendar interface so that we become familiar and comfortable with it. As an exercise, we're going to change some date and time frame views as well as show and hide calendars from various people. And finally, we will finish up our introduction by looking at some of the common Google Calendar settings. So what is Google Calendar? It is a free internet calendar service offered by Google that runs online, and you can access it through a web browser such as Internet Explorer. It is very flexible and very powerful, as we will learn in this and future lessons. An individual's calendar can be shared between many people, and conversely, a single person is able to access multiple calendars. I really want to emphasize those last 2 points. So firstly, an individual's calendar can be shared out to multiple people. This is important in our situation where our blind and low vision friends need to share their appointment books with their sighted helpers and the Seeing Eye Support Angels. And secondly, a single person has access to the calendars of multiple people. Again, this is necessary for our Seeing Eye Support Angels to access the calendars of many friends. So the Seeing Eye system is using Google Calendars as the back end to store and manage appointments. So whenever you make an appointment through the Seeing Eye administration website, a client makes a booking through a friend's website, or our friend makes a booking using the Seeing Eye system interface, that appointment will end up as an entry in a Google Calendar. That is why we need to learn how to use this very helpful tool. You may be wondering, when we already have the client administration section of the Seeing Eye website, why is it necessary to access the underlying Google Calendar in the first place? The reason is that not all of the functionality in Google Calendar has been made available to us through the administration section of the Seeing Eye website. So you will need to use Google Calendar in the following situations. If you need to remove an existing appointment, when you need to change the details of an appointment, such as who the appointment is with or the length of a meeting, if you need to reschedule an appointment to a different time or a different day. We also need to use Google Calendar to block out holidays and non-work time from our schedule in order to prevent people from being able to schedule meetings with us when we won't be available. Google Calendar also allows us to easily create recurring appointments. An example might be if you are running a massage clinic and you have a regular client that books in at the same time each week or every other week. By creating a recurring appointment, that meeting will also be created for us each week, and the appropriate time slot will be blocked out in our calendar. And for those people who have to manage the schedules of multiple people, such as support angels, Google Calendar allows us to work easily with multiple calendars. We're going to be looking at working with multiple calendars later in this training video. All of the other tasks will be covered in more detail in later videos. We can use Google Calendar to easily schedule new appointments. But there are situations where we're better off steering clear of Google Calendar and using the booking functionality in the client administration section of the Seeing Eye website. And as it turns out, those situations are fairly common. We need to use the Seeing Eye website whenever we need to make standard one-off bookings. When a booking is made through the Seeing Eye website, it stores additional information along with the booking about the client and about the service being offered. This helps invoicing and payment systems work more effectively. Moreover, the Seeing Eye website prevents duplicate bookings and makes sure all appointments fall within the pre-allocated availability times. So Google Calendar gives you more flexibility, but it also increases the chances of you making an erroneous booking. What this means in practice is that once you use Google Calendar to set up your recurring appointments and block out your non-work time, you will actually be using the Seeing Eye website to make most of your one-off appointments. You will need to revisit the Google Calendar whenever you need to delete or reschedule an appointment, but for the most part, you'll be making bookings through the Seeing Eye website. So let's take a look at how to log into Google Calendar. So right now we're on the Seeing Eye Assistant Client Administration webpage where we're logged in, and we've chosen the bookings menu option and we've selected a client. So once we scroll down to the bottom of this page, we will see their calendar as we normally would with their schedule on it. And at the bottom of the calendar, we'll see this little button here that says Google Calendar. So we'll click on that button and your web browser will open a new tab to the Google Calendar login page. So that's the first way we can get to the Google Calendar login page. The second way, if you're not already logged into the Seeing Eye Administration website, you can just navigate to Google's homepage, and on their menu bar at the top, you'll see there is a calendar link there. So if we just click that calendar link, we will be taken to the same Google Calendar login page. So now we'll log in. You'll log in with your email address and password that you've been provided with. Click the sign in button, and after a couple of moments, the Google Calendar will be displayed. So there's an awful lot to take in when you first see the screen. So what we're going to do now is just go for a little bit of a wander around, have a look at a brief overview of what the main areas are, and then we're going to go into each area in a little bit more detail. So the first thing we notice is this main area here with all the colours on it, which when you read the captions on the little coloured blocks here, you'll see that they're actually appointments. Now we have a scroll bar over here on the right that we can use to scroll up and down throughout the day. And across the top, we will see there are various dates. So I'm actually recording this video on the 9th of September. So we will see that the current day is highlighted in a grey colour, just to indicate what the current day is. You'll also notice that the events that are to the right of today are in a very vibrant bright colour, and the ones that are prior to the current time are actually in a dull, more pastel colour. And our current time, I'm recording this particular video at about 5:05 in the afternoon, and we'll see this little red line here indicates the current time. So this grey shaded day is the current day, and this little line is the current time. So really any appointments that appear beyond the current time will show in the bright vibrant colour to indicate that it's a future event, or if it's faded out more of a pastel colour, indicates that it's a past event. So moving along the top here, we have this idea of a today button. We use that quickly to navigate back to the current day as we've browsed off the day. We have these buttons here, which are the previous period and next period buttons. Next to that, we have the current range, in this case, the date range, which is currently displayed on the calendar. Now, to the right of that, we have different time frame view buttons that we can click and select, and we'll notice currently that the week button is depressed to indicate that our current display is to show the current week, which, as you'll see, we're displaying Sunday through Saturday, so that's our current week. So we'll cover those in a little bit more detail in a second, but I just want to quickly run over here and have a look down the left-hand column and take a quick look at what all these things are as well. So we have a create button at the very top of our left-hand column, which we use to create new events in Google Calendar. Below that we have what is referred to as the mini calendar, which is a quick way to navigate to a specific date to open your calendar and have a look. Below the mini calendar we have this idea of my calendars, which shows a list of all the people that are currently displayed on our calendar. We're going to come back and have a look at this in a lot more detail very shortly. But right now we're going to just go back up here and have a look at navigating our way around the calendar. So there's several ways to do this, but the one we're going to use most often are these next and previous period buttons. So we're currently on week view, so if I click the next button, we'll go to the next period. So that's looking at the following week, and if I click it again, we'll go to the following week. And once we've browsed off the current day, we can quickly and easily get back there always by just clicking this today button here. So now we've come back to the current day. So that's one way to navigate around. The other way is to use your mini calendar. Now you'll notice on the mini calendar here we've got a grayed out section, and that's indicative of what's currently displayed on the larger calendar on the right. So we can use these little arrows over here to flick forward the next month. So if we wanted to see what's happening in December the 10th, we can click on December the 10th and we'll see 10th of the 12th, and we'll be able to see what's happening here. So again, if we want to go back to today, we can click today. So they're the two main ways of quickly navigating around to different dates. Now, as I mentioned before, we have this scroll bar at the right-hand side to scroll from the start of the day, so 12 AM, and if I scroll right down the bottom, we will see that it goes to 11 PM at night. So generally, we want it sitting in the middle somewhere so that we can see what our work day is going to be. Now, up here, we're going to now have a look at the various time frame views, and the easiest way to do that is really just to click on one and have a look. So let's click on one. Let's have a look at the day view now. So we're displaying here up the top, we can see it says Monday 9th of the 9th. We can see our time. If I scroll up a little bit, we'll be able to get a better idea earlier in the day what's happening. And we'll see that from 10 AM till say 12, whoever this blue person is, which in this case is Betty Black, has a meeting with John Brown that runs for 90 minutes. He's got a 90-minute massage. And we'll see that Caesar Green, who is our green person, has a massage from 10:30 AM till noon with Fred Nurk. So the advantage of this view is we can see a lot of detail about the appointments, and the disadvantage of this view obviously is we only get to see one day's worth of information. So our week view, which is the default view, is probably one of the more practical views we have, because it gives us a good balance of detail of the appointments themselves, and also we get to see a little bit of the schedule as well. Now, however, in those instances where we do want to have a larger view or a view of the bigger picture, we can click on the month view and we can see a whole month at a time. So we'll notice it now says September 2013 up the top, and we'll see each one of these little squares, rather than now indicating a section of time, actually shows a day. And within that day we can see, if we take today for example, we can see at 10 AM we have John Brown, at 10:30 Fred Nurk, and there's three more that can't be displayed. So here we can see the disadvantage of this view is that it may not be able to necessarily display all of the information about the current day. The 4-day view is very, very similar to the week view, only rather than displaying 7 days, it's only going to display 4 days, which allows a bit more space on the screen to display information about each of the individual appointments. The agenda view shows us a rundown, a breakdown of all our appointments as they're coming up. So if there's nothing scheduled on a particular day, then we will notice that we won't have any entries here. So we'll see a gap between Wednesday, September 11 until Saturday, September 14. So the Thursday and Friday, we have no appointments, so it just does not appear on our agenda. So this is a very, very handy way of getting a quick summary of what we've got coming up in the near future. Now, while we're in this section, I'll just highlight this More button here, which has two options on it. One is print, which is very handy if you want a hard copy, especially if you want a hard copy of this agenda. It's very, very useful. And the other option is refresh. Now, generally you don't need to use the refresh option very often. Google Calendar is actually very good at dynamically refreshing as new events get popped onto your calendar. But for instance, if you had a blind or low vision friend who used their mobile phone or the Seeing Eye Assistant interface to schedule your appointment, it may not necessarily appear straight away on the calendar. So we just click this refresh option here, and that will just refresh the calendar and refresh the display. So let's flick back to our week view. One thing I do want to cover off on before we go and have a look at the My Calendar section is what happens if we accidentally click on any of these areas around the Google Calendar. So if I click here, we see we get this dialog pop up that's going to allow us to create a new appointment, which is often not what we want to do. So we can just click this little cross there, and that will clear that dialog and not cause any problems. Now that's the same even if we click up here in the top part of the calendar, which shows the full day event section. So if I click on there, again we get a similar dialogue, and much the same if we accidentally click on an appointment. So if I click on that, again we get a dialogue, so I can just dismiss that dialogue and clicking that little cross in the corner, and that will make sure that we don't cause any problems. Now if I click on an existing event, if I go over and move my mouse over the text of the event, you'll see it underlines into a hyperlink, and if I click on that, you'll notice it will actually take us to this separate screen. So again, if we've done that and it's an accidental click, the easiest thing to do is just click this little back to calendar button here, and we can just click that, and that won't make any changes to the event. So now we can move on to this idea of having multiple calendars displayed on our one single calendar. So as we move down here, we can see we've got a Seeing Eye training account, we've got Betty Black, we've got Caesar Green, we've got John White, and we've got tasks all displayed, available for display here. Now we'll notice also that it's only Betty Black, Caesar Green and John White that have colours in them, and the Seeing Eye training account and tasks are white, which means they're cleared, which means nothing is displayed. So let's click on one of these and have a look what happens. If I click on Betty Black, you'll notice as I move my mouse away from the Betty Black now, you'll see that the box next to her name has gone clear white, and you'll also notice that all of her appointments have been removed from the calendar display on the right. So again, I'll now turn off Caesar Green, and we'll see again he's now gone, and we can't see any of his green appointments displayed on our calendar. And I'll turn off John White, and now you'll see that our calendar is actually showing a free schedule. So this is usually a pretty good starting point, and this is what we recommend most support angels do when they're dealing with a particular client, is that they turn off all the displayed calendars and only turn the calendar on of the one person we're interested in. So let's say that we're trying to work with the calendar for Betty Black. We'll click her on, and then we would do whatever we need to do with Betty Black. And then when we finish with Betty Black, we would go and turn her off again. So that way it makes sure that as we're working with calendars, and especially when we're working with calendars for multiple people, that we're not actually scheduling appointments and rescheduling appointments or deleting appointments for the wrong person, which would obviously be a bit of a disaster and cause a lot of confusion. So that's a very important point. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out around this My Calendars is sometimes when you log into Google Calendars, it will be folded up like that, and you won't actually be able to see the list of people that you can display on your calendar. So you'll notice this little arrow next to My Calendars is now pointing to the right rather than down. Now, this is actually called an accordion control, whereas if I click it, it expands out. So much like opening up an accordion, and if I click it again, it closes up to save more screen space. So generally, we're going to want that open. Now, exactly the same thing can happen with our mini calendar up the top here. So again, it's on an accordion display. So if I click that, it can disappear. So if you come in and you log into Google Calendar, and down the left column here, it looks something like this. All you have to do is click these little arrows to the left, and that will actually expand what you need down there. So now that we've seen what the little arrow to the left of My Calendars does, let's have a look at this little arrow over here on the right, and let's see what that does. When I click on that, we get a pop-out menu, or what we refer to as a flyout menu. So we'll notice as I move down over each of the individual people's calendars as well, we'll again see this little arrow, and we can click on that, and we'll in this case we'll get a different flyout menu. So one of the interesting things we can do here is change the colour of the display. So if I change Caesar Green's colour to a nice, we've got this, it looks a bit like a salmon colour, and we'll put John White on, and we'll see that Caesar Green's appointments are shown in salmon and John White's are shown in pink, which are probably a bit close to each other in colour. So if ever you find that happens, if you've got a new person, you're managing their calendar for them, and two people have colours that are very similar, perhaps the easiest thing to do is just go and quickly change the colour of one of them so that you get a bit more contrast, so there's no confusing the two. So I'll just turn John White off again. So let's also go and have a look what else we can do with Caesar Green when we pop out this flyout menu here. A very quick way to only display the current calendar and no other ones is to use this first menu option here, so display only this calendar, so that will turn on Caesar Green. But if I go down to John White and I choose the same menu option, display only this calendar, it will automatically turn off Caesar Green and turn on John White. So that's a very, very handy little shortcut to do what we were recommending before, where you only have the calendar of one person displayed at a time. Now, the other thing we might see from time to time is that calendar you want to work with does not appear on your list. So you've logged into Google Calendars and you have a look and say, well, my accordion control here is expanded and so I can see everyone, but John White doesn't appear in my list. Where has he gone? So in that case, what we want to do is click on this little flyout menu here next to the My Calendars, click on Settings, and here we'll see a list of all the available calendars that have been shared with us. And in this case, we can see that John White's calendar is not ticked to show in the list. So if I turn that on, click it on, and then click back to calendar, we'll see that John White's now reappeared, which is what we wanted. If I go back into those settings where I just were, so under My Calendars and go into Settings again, we'll see we've got several tabs up the top here. Now, most of them you don't need to worry about. We've probably already, if you're synchronising the Google Calendar with mobile phones and things, we've generally set all that up for you. But you may want to come into this General tab here and just double check that we've set up the language right, your country right, your current time zone, and make sure that your date and time formats are going to be displayed correctly for whichever part of the world you happen to be in. Once you've made your changes here, so I would, for example, change this to Eastern time zone in Brisbane, and you just click the save button, and that's it. And then suddenly all the calendars for the various people will display in the right format. The final thing I want to cover off on today is how to log out of Google Calendar when you finish. So it's fairly straightforward. In the top right of your screen, you've got this little icon here with a little drop-down arrow next to it, which is, on your screen it may look a little bit different. This is just however you happen to have set up your Google profile picture with. So I'll click on that. We'll get this pop-out dialog here, and all we have to do is click the sign out button. Once we've done that, we're logged out. So here's a summary of what we've learned today. Firstly, we learnt what a Google Calendar is. Then we learnt from the Seeing Eye perspective when to use and when not to use the Google Calendar. We covered how to log into Google Calendar. We had a good overview of its interface. We changed some date and time frame views. We learned how to show and hide calendars for various people and how to look at some common settings. So this is Tech Support saying thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos where we will cover Google Calendars in a lot more detail.